Ever find yourself just, watching ants?
Haha, yeah.
They're everywhere, right? Like little workaholics, always on the go. But have you ever thought about what powers all that activity?
It's wild when you really think about it, all that energy in such a tiny package.
Right. So today we're diving deep into ant bioenergetics,
Yeah.
basically how these tiny guys use energy.
It's like peeking behind the scenes of their little ant world, right? Figuring out what makes these amazing little societies work.
Exactly. And get this, when we compare their energy use to ours, it's kind of humbling.
Totally. And we've got a ton of research to unpack. We're talking scientists like Golly and Gentry, Porter.
Real ant enthusiasts.
Oh, absolutely. They dedicated their lives to figuring out how much energy ants use and why it matters.
So no time to waste. Let's jump right in. First up, what fuels these little powerhouses? What keeps them going?
Well, they're like us in a way. They need their fuel. Mostly carbohydrates, lipids, sugars, fats, the good stuff.
Ant snacks?
Right. But, and here's where it gets interesting, their metabolic rate, how fast they burn this fuel. It's different, not just between species, but even within the same colony.
Hold on. Different jobs, different energy needs. Like I'm guessing a queen ant just laying eggs all day probably doesn't need as much fuel as a worker ant constantly running around.
You got it. Take the queen leafcutter ant. Acromyrmex acospinosus. Big name, I know.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
Haha, right. Anyway, she lays thousands of eggs. That's a ton of energy prepping for the colony's future. Studies show queen ants have way more fat reserves than males. They're literally fueling the next generation.
Wow, she eyes the powerhouse.
You could say that. Now, those worker ants we see hustling around, they're the real MVPs. Foraging, building, defending. It's a 247 job.
Burning the midnight oil or midnight sugar.
Something like that. And that nonstop work needs a seriously high metabolic rate.
Makes sense. Now, I saw some of the research, like those papers by Golly and Gentry, Porter. They use this thing called, get ready for it, respirometry.
Catchy, right.
So, what is it exactly?
Imagine measuring the exhaust of a tiny ant engine that's respirometry. It tracks how much oxygen an ant uses or how much carbon dioxide it makes. Basically, how much gas they're burning.
Yeah.
And what they found. Incredible.
Okay, you got to give us the details.
So, harvester ants, the tough guys in the desert collecting seeds. Totally different metabolic rate than fire ants, who are all about that aggressive foraging and milder climates, shows how much environment shapes their needs.
So a harvester ant's engine runs differently because of where it lives, how it's adapted.
Exactly. And speaking of adaptations, get this leafcutter ants, those farming champs, their metabolic rates higher than some flying insects.
No way. Those tiny guys carrying those huge GE leaves, they're burning energy like they have wings.
Okay.
Actually, seriously, that just blows my mind. But we got to talk about those leaves, those leafcutter ants. I mean, we talked about the energy they use just existing. But imagine hauling those giant things back to the colony. That's a workout montage right there.
Talk about heavy lifting. And the crazy thing is, they make it look easy.
Right. Like it's nothing.
Researchers like Leighton, Bartholomew, Feener, they were fascinated by this. They wanted to figure out the cost of transport.
Cost of transport, is that like ant gas mileage?
Pretty much. How much energy does an ant spend to go a certain distance carrying stuff versus empty-handed? Like if you were an ant carrying a leaf the size of a dinner plate.
Okay, I get the picture.
How much more energy are you burning compared to just strolling along?
So what'd they find? Are these little guys as efficient as they seem?
Get this, ants are crazy efficient at carrying loads way heavier than themselves. It's unbelievable. Like tiny weightlifting champs. One study even found that for this one species, Pachycondyla berthoudi, carrying something heavy was actually more efficient than just their own body weight.
Wait, hold up. Carrying something is easier than carrying nothing. How's that even work?
It's all about biomechanics, how they're built, how they distribute that weight, their leg structure, millions of years of evolution, all for being expert carriers.
So it's not just muscle. It's like their whole body is designed for it. It's mind-blowing.
Totally. And it's not just about going solo either. Duncan and crew, they looked at lactogenese ants, those group raiders, and the energy costs of different foraging strategies.
So, like, is it more efficient to team up? Like that saying, many hands make light work.
Exactly. Individual foraging works for smaller stuff, but when you need to haul something huge, teamwork is key. Group raiding actually reduces how much energy each individual uses.
Smart. So they know when to call for backup for the big jobs.
Yeah.
Like a well-coordinated, energy-saving team. But we've been talking about individual ants, small groups. What about a whole colony? How does that work energy-wise?
Now we're getting to the really fascinating stuff. Ant colonies are like busy cities, right? Thousands, even millions of ants. When you scale up their energy use, it tells you a lot about their impact on the whole environment.
So the bigger picture, how do you even begin to measure that? Seems impossible.
It's definitely a challenge, but scientists have gotten creative. Haynes, for example, studied Otta columbica, those leaf cutters we talked about.
The energy guzzlers,
Yeah.
what did they find out?
Turns out, those leaf cutters are like ecosystem engineers. Huge impact on how energy flows in their forest homes.
Ecosystem engineers. That's a pretty big title for a little ant.
Right. It's because they're constantly taking those leaves, which they don't even eat directly. They use them to grow fungus. And this whole process cycles nutrients, moves energy around the forest, like they're managing the forest's energy budget.
Wow. I never thought of it that way. Tiny farmers shaping the world around them.
Exactly. And the scale is massive. Haynes found they can channel way more energy than just natural leaf litter falling down. Like, they're energy hubs.
Incredible. But all those colonies, all those ants, got to take a ton of energy just to keep things running.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets even more mind-blowing. Makeham and Porter, they were looking at fire ant colonies, and they found something amazing. These colonies can actually control how much energy they use depending on how much food is around.
Wait, seriously? They can, like, adjust their energy usage, like a thermostat or something?
It's a collective thing, like tightening their belts when times are tough. Helps them survive in unpredictable environments.
That is amazing. They have, like, a built-in system, so they don't overspend and crash the whole system. What else can these little guys do?
Well, when it comes to efficiency, ants rarely disappoint. One of their most impressive tricks is temperature control, like a miniature climate control system for their whole colony.
Now that's high-tech. Do they have tiny air conditioners we don't know about?
All natural. It's called thermoregulation. And it's super important for their brood, the eggs, larvae, pupa, the next generation. Keeping those guys at the right temperature is critical.
So like a giant, perfectly climate-controlled nursery.
Exactly. And they go to incredible lengths to make it happen. Building special nests, moving the brood up and down to find the best temperature.
That is wild. They're not just energy efficient, they're master climate controllers. Our human technology can barely keep up.
It's a testament to how they've evolved. They can handle almost any environment.
You know, I'm exhausted just thinking about all this ant activity.
Right.
We've gone from these tiny marathon runners to entire ant cities with their own climate control. It's a lot.
Ants are amazing, that's for sure.
Totally. But before we wrap up this ant bioenergetics deep dive, let's talk bigger picture. Why should we care about all this ant energy stuff?
It's easy to forget about them, right? They're so small. But here's the thing. How they use energy, it tells us a lot about how healthy the whole ecosystem is.
Really? So we learn about the whole environment by studying ants.
Exactly. Remember those leafcutter ants? The ecosystem engineers?
Oh yeah, the little farmers?
If they disappear, it's not just a few ants missing. It affects everything. Nutrient cycles, energy flow, the whole forest changes.
Wow, so it's like a domino effect.
Pretty much. And this goes for a lot of ant species. They're like essential parts of a huge system. Might not seem like much on their own, but take them away and the whole thing can fall apart.
So by watching their energy, we're kind of checking the pulse of the whole environment.
You got it. And they're really sensitive. Pollution, habitat loss, even climate change ants feel it first. Their energy use, how they act, it all changes. We learn a lot by paying attention to that.
Wow, they're like in tune with everything around them.
Totally. Early warning system for the whole planet.
It's pretty humbling, right?
Yeah,
These little guys we barely notice are teaching us about our own planet.
it really is. And here's something else to think about. What if we could, harness that ant power? Their cooperation, their efficiency.
You mean like ant-inspired energy grids,
Yeah.
transportation systems based on how they carry stuff?
Exactly. Think about it. They've got millions of years of evolution figuring out the best ways to organize, to manage resources. There's so much we could learn.
It's amazing when you think about it. These tiny creatures, they might hold the answers to some of our biggest problems.
Yeah.
And it all starts with understanding how they use energy. Who knew?
The smallest things can teach us the biggest lessons, right?
Absolutely. So next time you see an ant just, running around doing its thing, remember, you're seeing a tiny powerhouse, a vital part of the planet, and way more important than we realize.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's our deep dive for today. Hope you enjoyed exploring the world of ant energy with us.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.